Hi Year 10, this is just a quick feedback video on the recent biology spring review. So I'm just going to go over each of the questions on the test, particularly on the ones that lots of people found difficult, and go over what you should have put for your answers and why. Hopefully you all got your correct class. So number 2, the organelle responsible for protein synthesis is a ribosome. If you did choose one of the others, can you make sure you go back and look over what the different cell organelles are and what their roles are, because that's something you're expected to memorise. So look over it and test yourself and revisit it again, say next week, and keep returning until you've got it memorised. Next up, which of the following is defined as movement of water from a dilute solution to a concentrated solution across a partially permeable membrane? When we're looking at cell transport, so we're going across a membrane here, if it involves water, it is always osmosis. Again, if you got modelled up, a few people chose active transport. Can you look back over your cell transport, so diffusion, osmosis and active transport, and make sure you're happy with the differences between the three. Number 4 was a bit of a trick question. So true or false, all cells contain their DNA within the nucleus. The vast majority of cells do contain DNA in the nucleus, but things like bacteria don't have a nucleus, but they still have DNA. So the actual correct answer there was false. Number 5, the word equation for aerobic respiration. If you didn't get this, please make sure you go back and check that you know the word equation for aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration in mammals, anaerobic respiration in plants and in yeast, because you need to know all of those. Once you've learnt them, it's really straightforward, but again, look at it, test yourself, revisit it until you've got it memorised. So this one you should have glucose plus oxygen, or they can go the other way around, it could be oxygen plus glucose, and then an arrow. I should actually be able to put this in there. Oh no, I can't. Never mind. Then an arrow, and then water plus carbon dioxide, or it could go carbon dioxide plus water, either way. Number 6, which of the following organisms respire? It's another trick question. All of these are living organisms. All living organisms respire, so you had to click every single box. Some people missed off bacteria. Sometimes we don't think about bacteria as being a living thing, we think about them being different, but they are living, they still carry out the life processes like reproduction and things, and respiration. And same with the oak tree. Some people instinctively think of plants as different and maybe they're not alive, but a tree is a plant, plants are alive, they still have to respire. Number 7, define the key term metabolism. I suspect from some of the wording of some of these answers, some of you googled it, because some of you had more complex wording than you needed. The wording you need at GCSE is simply the sum of all the chemical reactions in your body or in your cells. Number 8, we've got this results table here, showing mean metabolic rate of humans at different ages, and it's divided into males and females. What 2 conclusions can be made from the data in the table? So we had these options here. The correct ones, and you get a point for each, but this one, the second one, males have a higher metabolic rate than females after 5 years of age. And then the third one, the mean metabolic rate of females decreases faster than males up to 25 years of age. The other 3 were all incorrect. Number 9, there were quite a few issues for some of you on this question, percentage change calculation. Some people answered it brilliantly, that's fine, you can move on to the next bit of the video. But key thing with this, percentage change, so increase or decrease, comes up on biology exams all the time, so you need to practice and you need to be confident doing them. You often won't be given this handy equation that's been given here, you'll just be expected to know the method. Essentially, if I want to do percentage decrease, I need to find the original number and take away the number it ends up as, so I get the difference. So I've got the actual decrease as a number, but I want it as a percentage now. So I'm going to take that actual decrease, we can see it up here, decrease in metabolic rate. I'm going to divide it by what it started at, its original metabolic rate, and times it by 100. So in this case, we were looking at males and the change from 5 to 45. So the data's here. So our original metabolic rate is 53. What we end up with is 36 at the age of 45. So first thing I need to do is work out the difference. So 53 take away 36 equals 17. That step gets you 1 mark. Then I need to turn it into a percentage. So I'm going to take my difference, so 17, and I'm going to divide it by the original. So 17 divided by 53, and then times it by 100. And what you should get is something like 32.05, few extra decimal places on there. But then the other key thing in this question, and this will often appear in calculation questions, so look for it, is give your answer to, give your answer to 3 significant figures. So the third mark in this calculation is for getting your answer to 3 significant figures. So if I've started with 32.075, that's currently 5 significant figures, I need to round it. So 32.07 rounds to 32.1 to 3 significant figures. So that's the final answer. A few people made the classic error of rounding numbers before they'd finished the calculation. So doing 17 divided by 53 and rounding that to a whole number, and then turning that into a percentage, and so you ended up losing marks by rounding early. Always leave the rounding as the last thing you do. Okay, number 10, got cross-section of the leaf. Quite a lot of you chose the correct one here, so which part of the leaf does most photosynthesis take place? It is Q, so this is the palisade layer. These black dots on this picture are representing chloroplasts. You can see there's absolutely loads of chloroplasts in there because their primary role is photosynthesis. Some people chose P, and I can understand why, because it's the top of the leaf, you think that's where the light hits. But these are the upper epidermis and the waxy cuticle, and these layers are actually completely transparent, so the light just passes through them. Effectively, this is providing a skin and a waterproof seal. So the role of part P has nothing to do with photosynthesis, it's to do with the structure of the leaf. The next question asks you to identify what T is. Quite a few people chose stoma, and I can understand why, because this here is the stoma, or stomata in plural. So the stoma itself is the hole. You'll come across the word stoma meaning holes in other things as well, like if someone's had a tracheostomy put in their throat, they could have a hole there, that it's called a stoma as well. So stoma just means hole, but T is pointing at the cells either side of that, which control the opening and closing of the stoma, and those are called guard cells. You can think of them like guardians at the gate into the leaf. They're controlling what can go in and out, so they're guard cells. So now we're on to number 12. What is a tissue? So there's a specific wording you need in biology to define a tissue. It is a group of similar cells working together to perform a function. And what I would try and do is to drill that exact wording into your memory, test yourself. You can always do it like look, cover, write, check if you want to. Test yourself, revisit it, keep testing until you've got it fixed in your memory. Okay, 13. We've got this classic photosynthesis investigation. This is one of the required practicals you have to know about in detail, and you need to be able to apply your knowledge of this practical to slightly different situations as well. So here we're moving the lamp to different distances to change the light intensity, and we're counting the number of bubbles produced as a measure of photosynthesis. Now the question itself is asking you for what was the independent variable. Now people still get muddled between independent and dependent variable, so a little way to help you remember, which I've probably told some of you before, is to think dairy milk ice cream. So dairy milk, the D is for dependent, the M is for measure. So if it was the dependent one, that's what we're measuring. In this case, we were measuring the number of bubbles produced. But then the ice cream, we've got I for independent, C for change. So the independent variable is the thing we're changing, and in this case we're moving that light a different distance to change the light intensity. So the independent variable is light intensity. So try and remember dairy milk, ice cream if you get those muddled up for independent and dependent variable. Number 14, in the same investigation, the teacher suggests putting the boiling tube into a beaker of water. Suggest why this would make the results more valid. So if we pop up to the diagram, if we stick this boiling tube, boiling tube is just a slightly bigger test tube in case you're unsure. We've got water in here. We're going to stick it in a big beaker that's full of water, and what that will do is that the heat energy that is coming off this lamp is going to get absorbed by the water in the beaker, and it's going to help to maintain a constant temperature in this boiling tube for the pondweed. So it's going to stop temperature affecting the rate of photosynthesis, because temperature is another factor that will affect photosynthesis. So by having the water there, we could either have it in a big beaker of water, or we could have a big tank of water between the pondweed and the lamp, but that water is going to absorb the heat, and it's going to make sure that we're keeping temperature constant and we're only testing the effect of light. And that's why it makes it more valid, because we're only testing one variable and we're not having other confounding variables affect our results. Okay, 15, we've got this data from the investigation. We can see their results. You had to calculate the value at X. I don't think anyone got this wrong. 52 is the mean. Brilliant, you all know how to get a mean. 16, what evidence in the table shows that the data is repeatable? Some people getting muddled up on this because you are aware that to make something repeatable we've got to repeat it, we've got to take a mean. So quite a few people chose option 3 or 4, but that isn't my evidence that it is repeatable. My evidence that it is repeatable is when I look at these repeats. For each distance, the repeats are quite similar to each other. That's telling me that my test is giving me similar data every time. That tells me it's repeatable. If these were wildly different on each repeat, then there's something wrong with my method that isn't giving me repeatable data. So a good method should give you data that when you repeat it is similar, and that the fact that these are similar, 66, 67, 69, very close, that tells me I've got a repeatable method there. Okay, number 17, photosynthesis is endothermic. Remember, endothermic is about taking in energy. Photosynthesis is taking in light energy to happen. 18, a limiting factor of photosynthesis. There are 3 options: light intensity, temperature, or carbon dioxide concentration. 19, lots of you remembered this. So the chemical to test for starch is iodine. And what colour will you see if there's starch there? If the test is positive, it will be blue or blue-black or black. Any of those options are fine. A few people put orange. That's the colour the iodine is originally, but when it's in the presence of starch it changes colour. So it goes from orange to that blue-black colour. 21, one of these things that isn't an advantage of the adaptations of the basilisk lizard, most of you got this, warning colours to deter predators. That's not something that featured on the diagram, so that's the one to pick out. An advantage of the lizard being able to run across the surface of water, most people got something to do with escaping predators. There are other options you could have said, but the vast majority said to escape predators on land. 23, 2 factors animals compete for. I'm pretty sure everyone got this: food and territory. Good. A factor that plants compete for. Again, I think everyone got something. Water, light, space, or minerals, those are your options. 25, we've got the Creosote Bush, so we've got a well-adapted plant here for the desert. And one of the things it does is produces a poison that kills the roots of other plants. How does this poison help the Creosote Bush to survive in the desert? Now, if it's killing the roots, it's going to reduce competition between its roots and the roots of other plants. And the key thing in the desert that you're going to be competing for is water. So you need to talk about reducing competition for water or something along those lines. 26, define an ecological community. Most people got near to this. A lot of you did get the mark. A community is a group made up of populations of different species that live in the same habitat. You could have worded that differently, but the key thing is that you've got groups from multiple species involved. And 27, carnivorous plants are adapted to live in soil which is deficient in nitrates. So they catch insects and things and they digest the proteins to get nitrates out of them. And that was that. Your total mark should be out of 30. I'm emailing each of you individual feedback with your score and with some key things for you to work on now as well as a result. So once you get that feedback, email me if you have any questions, but hopefully that gives you lots of things to think about.